That's a bit like the reaction we all had to the breaking news from the NBA. Brad Stevens has moved on as head coach of the Boston Celtics and has moved up to be the team's president of basketball operations, replacing Danny Ainge, who is retiring.
Breaking news out of the NBA world, and that, of course, the first coaching domino fallen. It is Ime Udoka. He is going to be the next head coach of the Boston Celtics. It's
And that might do it. Al Horford with the rebound, throws it up in the air, and the Boston Celtics will go to the NBA Finals.
Water bottle thing earlier.
Man, fuck that!
YouTube, how's everyone doing? Jags to Riches, James Peters. Thank you so much for your time. Straight to it, guys. This video today, honestly, is just another video. We are on our road to the NBA Finals. Game 1 tomorrow. The last couple days, I've dropped multiple videos. One celebrating the Boston Celtics Game 7 victory against the Heat. Obviously going into, a deep dive of that series and obviously their Eastern Conference run in its entirety, a full breakdown, their players, their stats, just a reflection. And then obviously yesterday I dropped an NBA Finals preview video, if you will, where again, I touched on the Celtics run, their key players, key moments, and then I did the same for the Warriors. Now I didn't go into predictions or matchups or anything along those lines. That is actually something we'll be doing tonight on Celtics Corner. We'll be doing a community call-in show, I believe, where we'll spend time talking about, our predictions, X factors, head-to-head matchups, and kind of touch on everything else that I didn't cover in yesterday's video. So I thought that it would not be appropriate to not at least spend time talking about two of the most influential, people in this process. And that is Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka, right? The job that these two gentlemen have done, and when you take us a second to remember, this is a rookie head coach, first time head coach, and a rookie president of basketball operations, an executive position, and a first time doing it. So it's not just their first year with this franchise in this new position. It's their first time ever doing it. Brad has never been in an exec position before this. Ime has never been a head coach before this. So honestly, again, I'm going to spend a little bit talking about, the series of events that led us to where we are right now. The Brad Stevens era, him becoming president of basketball operations, hiring Ime, the rest of Brad's moves as, his first year as president of basketball operations. We'll review, the genius that has been Brad Stevens. And then we'll talk about who is Ime Udoka as, his time as a player, as an assistant coach, and then obviously this incredible run that has been this year. But getting right to it, guys, Brad Stevens, this is a guy that from 2001 until 2007, I believe, was an assistant coach for Butler before becoming their head coach for 5 seasons. Led them to led him to a national championship where they almost upset, a top-ranked Duke, where Gordon Hayward almost hit that half-court buzzer beater. What a game that was. And they were underdogs. So, an excellent career with Butler, which would lead to him being hired by the Boston Celtics in 2013, 2014. Now, Brad would go on to make 7 straight playoff appearances, He would only miss his rookie campaign. So 7 out of 8 years, Brad Stevens would go on to make the playoffs, right? He would also make 3 Eastern Conference Finals, including the 2016-17 year, 17-18 year, and 19-20, the bubble year. Now, what is that? What's incredible about those 3 ECFs is just how different each of those teams were. The 16-17, that was the year that was, led more so by Isaiah Thomas and, his incredible run. And I mean, I did an entire video basically dedicated to remembering IT. I mean, that was the year he averaged nearly 30, finished top 5 in the MVP, his sister passed. And then, obviously the next time that they would go to the ECF the following year, team was much different, but that was when Kyrie and both Gordon were out. So he would take a bunch of young guns, Tatum, Brown in their, rookie and sophomore campaigns, Terry Rozier in his 3rd year, Marcus Smart in his 4th year, Marcus Morris, Al Horford, and literally take that team to a game 7 where they lost to LeBron James by single digits. And then, of course, the bubble year, who can forget that, which was just such a wild year. And that team was a team led by Kemba Walker. That was Jason Tatum, first-time All-Star. Jaylen Brown still had not made an All-Star. We had guys like, Daniel Tice was our starter. We had Brad Wanamaker was our first guy off the bench. Smart was our, number 2. So definitely a much different team. And, like I said, some of the notable players, he had Isaiah Thomas, Al Horford, Gordon Hayward, Kyrie Irving, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Terry Rozier, Al Horford. I mean, he has had some, excellent players, excellent, teams. And I mean, when it comes to Brad Stevens, I think he is as good as it gets. I have so much respect for him. And we're about to talk about the events that led to him stepping down as a head coach. But I mean, at that time, it was a panic to me because, again, I don't think that there's too many coaches in the game that are better from an X's and O's, OTA, like just knowing the game, drawing up plays. I mean, I think Brad is absolutely brilliant. Now, of course, in June of 2021, Danny Ainge would shock the world after, a disappointing season in which the Boston Celtics would lose in the opening round of the playoffs. Obviously, we didn't have Jaylen Brown. It was a very injured team. You're talking about, a team that had, Marcus, Jalen, Fournier, and Romeo was starting, and Peyton Pritchard was like our first guy off the bench, and we were very banged up. So, I mean, at the conclusion, Danny would step down, which would then see Brad Stevens basically replace him and take over as the president of basketball operations. Now, he would go on to hire Ime Udoka. Now, before that, though, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but prior to him hiring Ime, he would actually orchestrate a huge trade, and a trade that has now shown its brilliancy throughout these playoffs, in which he would send out Kemba Walker, who was just an all-star, a year before. He would send out Kemba and a first. Kemba, who was on a max, for Al Horford, who was at Oklahoma City, who had only played in, 27, 28, 29 games and pretty much was shut down. And Moses Brown, which he would end up flipping for Josh Richardson. So essentially Josh Richardson and Al Horford for Kemba and a first. And I remember at that time, it was a lot of people that were not too thrilled about that trade. It was a lot of kickback. It was a lot of people like, Al's washed, this and that. And then Al, of course, would go on to average, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists throughout the regular season. And in the playoffs, he's averaged closer to 13, 10, and 4 while shooting nearly 50% from 3. Basically outperformed Giannis Antetokounmpo in that game 4, dropping the people's elbow on them. Has had some huge moments throughout these playoffs and carried this team and seemed to will them at times. I mean, he has been spectacular. He really has. I mean, I can argue that these playoffs alone won that trade. And I mean, like I said, I love Kemba as much as the next man, but I mean, he obviously is not even on the same team that he originally got traded to in OKC. He was bought out and then ended up with the Knicks and isn't even in their rotation when the season ended. So it is a sad story, but shout out and thank you to Kemba for, the years that he fought here. It just sucks with the injuries and how quick, he really digressed after starting to get hurt, But looking at some of the other moves, he would then go on to hire Ime Udoka, who was one of the, most sought after coaches at that time. A lot of people were talking about him, Chauncey Billups, and I believe the Celtics hired a head coach before anyone else. So essentially we went out, got our guy, and it damn sure paid off, has it not? Now, going over some of the other moves, notable moves from Brad, in his opening year. Obviously, like I said, he would instantly, besides hiring Ime, the Al Horford, he would also do the Josh Richardson for Moses Brown trade, bringing in Josh, who was excellent for us. While we had him, I believe 44 games, something along those lines, averaging 10 points off the bench, 40% from three. And two big moves. He would extend Marcus Smart. He would extend Rob Williams to 4-year contracts, which, locking both of those guys up to the contracts that they did. Now he looks, Rob Williams, arguably has the best contract in the NBA. He's getting 10, 11 million a year. Are you crazy? And then of course, Marcus making 16, 17 a year. So locking up both of those guys. And then of course, securing Dennis Schroeder, who was, on a minimum at that 5.9 million, which was a huge move at that time. And when you think to what that ended up leading to, that was a really big move. That was a guy that was offered 20 plus million the previous season. And, Dennis had some, he had some flashes with us, some good games, 20 plus, 30 plus point scoring. He just didn't really fit the system in the direction this team was trying to go in, but he did do admirable at times, especially at early on when we were hurt or injured. But, some of the other moves, he would obviously bring back in his Cantor freedom. We, at that time, didn't have a lot of depth when it came to the front court. That would obviously change by the time we get to the trade deadline. And speaking of the trade deadline, he would send out Dennis Schroeder, who, like I said, was on a 1-year, 5.9. He was gone regardless, right? And at that point, we started to see he may not be the best fit for this system. He sends out him and Enes Kanter freedom and brings back Daniel Tice. And Daniel Tice has been excellent for us as that number 3, front court big. And that's exactly what he is supposed to do. He has come in, like when Rob got hurt, he played great at the end of the regular season. I think he had 10 out of 13 double-digit scoring games. And if you look at him in the playoffs, I believe it was game 2 or 3 in the opening round, he had 15 points in 11 minutes. He's flashed a few times, and basically whenever Rob has gone down, he has stepped in and really has performed well. You know what I mean? I know Bam, really kind of shit on him in game 3, but other than that, he's performed very well. When Al has gone down, Grant kind of fills that role a little bit more. Grant kind of plays, a little bit closer to what Al does, I believe, than Daniel. Daniel kind of has been more with Rob as a backup goes. But like I said, that move, sending out Schroeder, put us in a situation where we needed backcourt, an additional playmaker. And that is when the move that, out of all Brad's moves, the one that's kind of controversial, he would actually go on to trade Josh Richardson and a first, Romeo Langford, for Derek White. Now, at first, I was not big on that trade. I thought that, even though White was better, I thought Richardson was close enough to where sending out the first and, but the more, and as time is going on and the more I've seen White and the more comfortable he started to get within this system, the more I'm all for this trade. I really am. I'm a big Josh Richardson fan. He's actually played great in San Antonio, and I wish him all the success. I wouldn't mind him coming back in another year when he gets freed up. But Derek White, this system, his skill set, he does everything really at a high level. It's just the scoring that can be inconsistent. So if he figures out, because, he basically averaged 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists while playing excellent defense, throughout the regular season. Had a really strong finish to the regular season. Started off really slow in the opening round of the playoffs, but you've seen in the Milwaukee series and definitely in the Miami series, he's had some really big moments. So he's also on a really good contract. We've got him secured the next couple years. So I mean, he is a combo guard. He can be a playmaker. He can, do all of the primary ball handling responsibilities. So when Smart goes down, he comes in at the 1, but he can also play beside Smart. So he has been a very welcome addition. So again, Brad basically sent out Kimba and Schroeder and Cantor and was able to bring back Daniel Tice, who has been great in his role. Al Horford, who has been, I mean, just spectacular. He really has. And then Derek White. I mean, so again, the moves that Brad Stevens made this year in his opening year, and when you really think about the fact that we really were so fortunate because this man, instead of leaving and going to basically probably take any other coaching job, you don't think Brad could go become the Lakers coach right now if he wanted to, but he gets promoted. Who do you think better than anyone knows what this team needs? What kind of moves need to be made? Every player on this team, pretty much, he has coached their entirety of their career. He knows their tendencies. He knows their strengths, their weaknesses. That's why as soon as he gets the position, what's he do? Brings back Al Horford, brings back Daniel Tice. You know, you start to see him make moves that he's like, this is the team I would have wanted. And not only that, this is the team that I think these players fit with what Ime Udoka and the direction of this team, you know, what we're trying to accomplish here. But I mean, again, that is to take a guy who has, you know, succeeded at such a high level at anything he's done, and then a guy who knows what this team needs. Like, he was able to go find his successor. And like I said, I don't think anyone, there's not many X's and O's coaches that are better than Brad Stevens. That is not what this team needed. We needed someone to come in and to be able to build a rapport with these guys, to set a different culture. I seen a comment recently, and it was like, after I think the win against Miami, Rob Williams was coming out the game, and him and Ime did, you know, one of those cool handshakes. And it's like, you honestly ever think him and Brad would do something like that? Like, no. And it's nothing against Brad. You know, these guys, of course, they love him, they respect him, and they appreciate his brilliant and, I mean, what he's able to do. But Ime just seems like that guy, like that they can just, you know, really be themselves, you know, shoot the shit with, talk with them. Ime is a former player, you know, a guy that got it out the mud, who grinded for everything he's gotten. You know what I mean? And I think that's a perfect time to transition over. And obviously, Ime has implemented some new things, you know, his defensive, the switch everything approach, and, you know, the playmaking, the passing. There are different changes, but to me, it's more so the relationship, the chemistry, and everything he's built with these guys. I mean, it's like, think of it like this. If Brad can get, you know, 80% out of these guys, even though he might be better at Ime, you know, if Ime can get these guys to then give them 100%, like, that is at this level, when you're talking about the top, you know, 50, 100, 200 players in the world out there giving craft. So again, I think Ime is exactly what this team needed. I won't go and say he's, oh my God, such a mastermind, that much better than Brad, because I mean, obviously that's not the case. I mean, Brad is as good as anyone, but what Ime was able to do that Brad couldn't was, you know, connect with these players on a, you know, a friendship or just an understanding, you know. And I'm not going to get into all, you know, the race and all that shit, you know, but obviously that does, you know, in today's weird society with all the shit going on in the world, and especially at that time, you know, that was just the right hiring. And obviously it has, you know, I mean, look at what it's done. I mean, speaking of this year, look at Ime, 51 wins, 31 losses, good for the number 2 seed. I mean, we just beat Miami. I mean, look at the playoffs, right? Everyone, you need to watch out, you know, tank, avoid Brooklyn. Nah, we're good. We're going to play to win. And that move, obviously, we sweep the Nets. And by doing that move, it allows us the game 7 at home against the Bucks in the second round, in which we win against the defending champs. And then we go on to beat the Miami Heat in 7, looking at the first NBA Finals since 2009, 2010. Absolutely incredible. And especially when you talk about the historic midseason turnaround, right? They were 17 and 19 coming into 2022. I mean, it was not looking good. And we spent the majority of the month of January just fighting to get back up and stay at 500 consistently. It wasn't until like the last week of January where we finally hit 500 and then would stay over 500 for the rest of the way out. I mean, January 22nd, we were the 10th seed at 23 wins, 24 losses. And then they would go on to win 28 out of the next 35 games. He would take Jason Tatum to his first ever first team All-NBA. He would coach Marcus Smart to the first Defensive Player of the Year as a guard award in 25 plus years since Gary Payton and Michael Jordan. He would coach Rob Williams from a guy who was on the bench last year to a second team all defense, a 10-10 walking double. Grant Williams from a guy who we thought wouldn't be on the team after this year to now is looking at a pretty good contract this upcoming off season. One of the best, 3 and D, wings in the game, can play the front, can pretty much guard almost all 5 positions. Excellent from 3, one of the top 15 shooters in the NBA. I think 1 or 2 on the Celtics when it came to percentage, over 40%. The job he did on KD and Giannis in the playoffs, Grant has been excellent. He is our PJ Tucker, just younger, and really been a welcome addition. And then when you look at Ime as a player, right? He was a player from 2003 to 2011, Portland, San Antonio. I mean, his best year was like 06, 07 when he was with Portland, averaged about 9 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Now, what is kind of cool is he actually played against Curry. So when he was at Sacramento, he is now going to be coaching against Curry when he actually played against him. You know what I mean? Because remember, he was just in the league about 10 years ago. So some of these guys that have been in the league, 10 plus years, LeBron, Curry, all these guys in their early to mid 30s, they've more than likely played against Ime. So, Ime Udoka, I think it was an absolute tragedy that he was not in the runnings for Coach of the Year. I think the right man won with Monty Williams, but I think you could see a similar case to what Monty did this year. Remember, Monty probably should have won over Thibodeau last year, and because, they shit on him, they kind of made it up to him this year, even though I do again believe, because it's a regular season award, Monty should have won. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics run this back and have a similar season next year, success-wise, if he would win it, because, again, it's absolute blasphemy that he wasn't in the finals. When it came to that award, he has been spectacular. And again, when it comes to coaching, he spent, 7 years as an assistant coach with the San Antonio Spurs. He would spend another year with, the 76ers as an assistant. That's where he would run into Al Horford, Josh Richardson, and actually coach those guys there. And then he would spend a season at Brooklyn. And obviously another time that was talked about is the 2019 FIBA team, where he would actually coach Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White. And that's pretty much where he would start to build the rapport with all these guys. And a lot of the respect that the guys had for him would pretty much come from, that time frame, that time period. So again, guys, just wanted to spend I thought that it was only fair to actually make a video and spend some time talking about both of these gentlemen and the incredible job that they have done this year. For this to be, like I said, their first year as a head coach, first time as a head coach for Ime, first time in an executive, president of ops, position for Brad, and the first time he's ever done it. And then all the other things, you're implementing a new system with Ime. You've got Jaylen and Jason, the first time they're going to be the 1 and 2 undisputed. You've got Smart, his first time, as a point guard. Here you go. It's just Rob Williams, first time as a starter. There was just so many moving factors and pieces. And when you think back to early October and November when it was #fire Ime, and we were a 10th seed and we were the laughing stock. And for us to then come back and to do what we did again, it was a historic, we broke the record for when it came to midseason turnaround. It has been a wild ride. And the fact that this team is in the NBA finals, it is a special year. It is a special group. And again, I could not be more proud of this team. I could not be more proud to have Ime Udoka as my head coach and Brad Stevens still as a member of this organization. I hope neither one of their asses go anywhere. But again, guys, 7 p.m. tonight, we'll be doing a call-in show, a community show where we go into more of a deep dive about the NBA Finals on Celtics Corner. And then, of course, tomorrow is going to be Game 1. So we will be doing a pregame show. And in these damn 9 o'clock games, we'll of course do a post-game show for game one. I just don't know what time it will post, maybe the next morning, just based on how late it is. But again, guys, thank you so much for your time. Jags to Riches, James Peters. Again, thank everyone for all the new subscribers. We've gone up, 20, almost 30 people in the last several days. So I appreciate all the people that have subscribed. If you haven't, I would please ask that you give me that opportunity. Hit the subscribe button. It is free. And I will continue to try to improve and work my ass off and provide the best content that I can for you all. Thank you so much. Have an excellent conclusion to your day. Take care, guys.